I picked up this Volvo V70R for just $1,500 last year, and the car has come a very long way since then. When I first picked it up, it broke down within just 3 minutes of my ownership, and since then I've completely transformed this car with suspension, turbo, and exhaust upgrades. In the last video, I finished up my 6-speed manual swap, which was the biggest automotive project that I had taken on to this day. In the process, the entire engine was overhauled, and after all that work, it felt so good to drive it on the road and shift some gears with my new 6-speed transmission. But just like with any big car project, the next 1,000 miles of driving revealed some more issues. We've got some rough running issues, some suspension work that still needs to be done, and some cosmetic upgrades. So in this video, we're gonna fix everything wrong with my manual swapped Volvo V70R. We've got a lot of cosmetic and mechanical issues to take care of in this episode, as well as some upgrades to this thing, because I've got some cool parts that I want to put on it. Now, the main issue that we'll be tackling today is a broken axle. Now, it's not fully snapped like in the beginning when I first picked up this car, but the axle that came out of this side was actually from a crashed S60R, which I pulled all of the parts out for the manual swap. And I think because that axle was hit on that corner, there is some damage to the actual hub. I've also been having some rough running issues, and I think that's largely to do with some air leaking from this intake pipe. So I do have a replacement intake pipe that we'll be putting on. We're going to be upgrading some motor mounts because this is kind of sloppy. And then something that's very long awaited is a fresh R bumper. Believe it or not, this is actually my original R bumper that's been completely resprayed by a local paint shop, and it looks fantastic. The paint on it is so beautiful. He also fixed my fog lights. He fixed the sagging lip that happens on every single Volvo R bumper. We're also gonna finally put the Spaceball to its completion in the car. Oh, it's a boy. While I'm working down here in the wheel well, there's two more things I want to knock out. We got to refill the transmission with some fluid that we just lost from pulling the axle. And I also want to re-grease my brake pads because they're kind of squeaky just under light pressure, and when they're hot, And I think that's part of this caliper design that just comes with it. So without changing the compound, I think a bit more grease is gonna be the best thing we can do to quiet those down. I also wanna apologize that I'm like profusely sweating. It's the middle of summer in LA. It's like 105 degrees out, and I don't have a fancy shop with air conditioning and lifts, but I'm just stoked to be working on this thing. So I'm gonna get back to it, refill the transmission, and grease up the brake pads. The fill plug is a 24 millimeter way at the back here. I snaked my funnel up here and I'm gonna fill it up with some more Redline MTL. Now I'm curious, I've installed a lightweight flywheel on this car and it's got a bit of gear chatter, which is normal because it deletes the dual mass flywheel that normally absorbs that vibration. But I'm curious if anyone's done any testing on transmission fluids that actually quiet that gear chatter down. Not that it's annoying, but it would be nice to have it a little quieter. I guess that means it is annoying. Let's see if it's pouring out the bottom yet. You can see that the fluid is now pouring out the bottom, so that means that the transmission is full. Now I can put this fill plug back in. Don't need to go super tight on that. Just enough to crush the washer. A quick break from wrenching on the V70R to talk about today's sponsor on the channel, which is FlexiSpot. This is their new E7 4-leg standing desk, which they sent over to me, and I'm using it as a new workbench in my garage. I've put a ton of work into this space, and previously my desk was a picnic table that was like a plastic fold-out table. And now I have a proper workbench that looks beautiful. I can work on my Harbor Freight shop chair, or I can raise it up to stand on projects if I'm quickly working on things while the car is on jack stands. And this thing has an insane weight capacity of something like 540 pounds. So it could lift me and a whole bunch of tools with it. I'm almost inside my ceiling here, so I'm gonna come back down. And I have a ton of confidence in this thing as a workbench for my garage, for all my different projects, whether it's soldering something on the desk or fixing an intake. I can't wait to use this thing some more, and I'm sure you'll see it in the videos. A huge thanks to FlexiSpot for sponsoring this episode. With that being said, let's get back to working on the V70R. Now with a little bit of brake grease, we'll get these guys freshly lubed up. It also helps to put it on the ears, and then I'll slide it right back in. Those shocks look fantastic. With the suspension now complete in the rear, it's time to move under the hood of the V70R and fix some of my rough running issues. under 3,000 RPM, the engine kind of hesitates a little. It's not perfectly smooth. It's kind of a little lurchy and jerky under 3,000 RPM, and I'm putting it down to a vacuum leak from the original V70R intake pipe. It's in pretty poor condition, and so I've got a new one that I'm going to replace. And while I'm in here, I'm going to do some upper motor mounts because this bar is kind of sloppy. So let's pull out this upper strut brace, the intake, replace it, upgrade the mounts, and put it back together and see if it runs any smoother. Well, undoubtedly, that right there was my vacuum leak. Also, this is on here pretty loose. I don't really trust that that wasn't leaking. Our new engine mounts are in, and it makes this strut brace super rigid, which is really nice for crisping up the shifts. The intake is all back on. The stock box is back in, which is great because it sucks colder air in from the bumper. Now it's time to move on to the cosmetics. I want to put on the new bumper. I want to upgrade this little side marker here because this has been broken for a while. And then finally, the space ball. So let's get on to some cosmetic things and make this car look like an R should look. Look at that, what a thing of beauty. This is where our lovely fresh hardware comes in. Oof, where would we be without FCP Euro? Let's go. The V70R looks and feels so much better after all the work that we did to it in this episode. I love the look of the R front bumper back on the car. It's how this thing was meant to look. Mechanically, there was also a lot of improvements. The BC Racing coilovers ride a lot smoother in the rear. I think my original shocks may have actually been blown because it was quite a big difference. To my surprise, the solid motor mounts that we put on the strut bar made a huge difference as far as drivability, but there's almost no added vibration, at least that I can tell. I was afraid that that might make it kind of unlivable in here, especially at idle. But if anything, it's just smoother than it was before. The steering response on this car always catches me off guard. It's so sharp and direct. This thing needs bucket seats. Oh, and the brakes feel so good. And it freaking screams, man. I love this car. How is a wagon this fun in the canyons? The only other things I want to do to this car are a proper exhaust from 88 Fab and a proper tune from Alexander's that we'll kind of work on together with a few different revisions. So look out for those episodes here in the future. Other than that, I just want to say a huge thank you for watching. Thank you for the support on this Volvo V70R series. It's been fantastic. And as per usual, I've already bought another project car. It's a German supercharged manual sedan that I'm very stoked about, and I'll be driving it cross country after doing a ton of work to it on the East Coast. So look out for that in the future. Please subscribe if you're not already. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.